The HGSI Group History Analysis template within EdgeRater is useful for looking through the history of groups within HGSI that have been saved on a regular basis. And I'll give an example. I'll bring my HGSI screen up, and I'm looking at the designer right now. And in the left-hand side, you can see I have, in my user groups category, I have a list of top 50 group inclusion report groups. And these have been numbered on a date basis, so you can tell what date the group is for. So as I scroll through the groups, I can see the stocks that appeared in those groups for that particular day. But what's hard for me to tell by looking at this is if a stock has appeared in a group on consecutive days. I would have to kind of have a mental picture of the stocks in this group, and then if I wanted to see if this is the first time they've made an appearance, I'd then have to go back through all of the other groups and kind of have a look and see if they appeared in those groups, or if it was the first occurrence, or how many times they appeared. And of course, as you can imagine, it's hard to do that visually by looking through the groups like that. So the whole point of the EdgeRater template is to allow you to get a good visual on that. And in order to use the template, what you have to do is you basically select your group that contains all of the subgroups, and then you go to and this is in the designer, then you go into the file and you say ASCII utilities export groups as lists. And I'm going to save these into a location on my hard drive under the EdgeRater symbol lists folder directory. And I have a subfolder here called History Top 50 GIR. So let me select that, and I'm just going to save these files, and I'll include all subgroups, I'll exclude any indexes, and I'll save it in the format of symbol comma name. I'll hit OK. Now it says that there's some of those files already exist because I've run this before on this machine, so I'll just say overwrite, say yes to all. So very quickly it's done that export, and what it's produced are a bunch of files on my hard drive in that location which correspond to the groups that were in HGSI. And if I open up any of these text files that were created, you can see they contain the same stocks that were in the groups within HGSI. But now what you can do, this is now in a format that is readable by EdgeRater. So if I point EdgeRater to this root folder here, History Top 50 GIR, it can give you a lot of information about the contents of the groups. So I'm just going to do that right now. So close this, I'll close HGSI, bring in EdgeRater, and I'll hit the Change Settings button just to pick the location that I just saved those groups to, and that was in the History Top 50 GIR. I'll say OK, that's my root folder. And then I'm going to, basically in the filter here, I could choose not to use any filtering, so it would include every single group underneath that root. Or in this case, what I'm going to say is exclude groups if the name contains weekend. Because in those groups that I showed you before, I had some groups which were just essentially, let's look at October for example. So I have, going through from the 1st of October, daily results, and then the weekend there's kind of a roll up of the things that happened during the week. So I don't necessarily need to include those in this analysis, so I'll exclude any group that contains the name weekend. I'll hit OK, and then I'll just hit run on this template, and very quickly it's sort of analyzed the whole tree there, and that's how fast it works. I wasn't doing anything special here. Very quickly it comes back with the result. And so what I can do now is just quickly see the dates. The dates are along the top here. So on the 24th, I can see the 50 stocks that made an appearance on the 24th. And if I wanted to see what made an appearance on the 23rd, I can click to sort by that column. Then I see the 50 that made an appearance on the 23rd. And then if I can also see if there was a yes in both columns, that it made an appearance on both of those days. I can go back in time all the way through to the beginning of this spreadsheet, which would have been the first group that was saved, and I can see the 50 stocks that were included on the 9th of May, and so on and so forth. You can sort this any way you like. You can see the yeses in the column if it was included in the groups on that date, and then, as with most templates in EdgeRater, if you double click on a cell, then a chart will appear, and the chart has some special abilities to it now as well. If I pop this into the side over here, put this on the other side, and we'll go back to the cell I clicked on. So I clicked on LCI, and so it's showing me now a chart of LCI, highlighting the dates that I clicked on, the 5/19, so that will be that date right there, 5/19. And then at the bottom of the screen, in this lower sub area, what you'll see is the blue line is basically indicating the day that that stock made an appearance in any of the groups that it investigated. So very quickly, using this template, you can see the history of the groups, when stocks were included in a group, how often they were included in a group, if they've just made an appearance like for the very first time in the group. And that can be very insightful. And it's important to know that if you want to see the chart of the stock, then you actually have to have a symbol list selected that contains that stock. So I have my warehouse all securities list selected here, which contains all the securities. And so I'm okay then by scrolling through each of these symbols, and I can see the chart immediately. But if I hadn't selected that, and if I'd selected a list that didn't contain that stock, then if I click on the symbol in the worksheet, then I don't actually get to see the chart. So my current symbol list has to contain that stock. You may have a top 50 group inclusion report that you're running every day, and then all of a sudden you get one stock appears and it hasn't appeared forever before, and so that might be the indication that it is starting now to make a run. So the way that you could do that to find the stocks that haven't been appearing very frequently, or the first time they've appeared, is basically to sort the columns. Put a yes in the second column, put a yes then in the first column, and as I go down to the bottom of this list of yeses, you see that the yeses to the right become less frequent. And then by just looking across, I can see, for instance, here that MKSI, if I highlight that row for you, MKSI hasn't had a yes in that column for a long time, so it's starting to, this is the first day in a long time that it's made an appearance. And if I select MKSI here, and then we can see that indeed that was the first day that it made an appearance, bearing in mind that the data I have here is up till October the 30th, but the last date that I saved these groups for was the October the 24th. And so that's why it's highlighting a bar that is before the current day. And you can see it started making an appearance back on the 24th. So, and then you can just obviously use your scroll keys just like any template in EdgeRater, and quickly just go through the charts to find things of interest. So that's one use for this template. Another use for this template is with smart groups. So in exactly the same way, let me show, I'll bring in my HGSI again. So in exactly the same way, smart groups by default have the dates as the first part of the name. So 10/30/2014 Best of Woodward and Brown Smart Group contains these stocks right now. And one of the recommended things to do is when you run or when you update your data every day is to drag these smart groups down into your user groups folder, thereby creating a history of the smart groups. So I have in here in my user groups a history of smart groups that I created just by dragging that first root smart group down, and so it's thereby stored a history every day. Now I can export that in exactly the same way that I did before with the group inclusion report, and so that would be clicking on the group, clicking on File, ASCII Utilities, Export Groups as Lists, and then choose a location to save it to, and this time I'll choose a different folder name. I'll save it to Smart Group _ Woodward and Brown WB _ Morales and Catcher MK, and that's just going to be the root location I'm saving it to. So then I'll click on Save, and same settings as before, and I'll click OK. They already exist because I've done this before. And this time it will take a bit longer because these groups, there is a lot more to these groups. The Woodward and Brown has a lot of subgroups to it. The Morales and Catcher groups have a lot of subgroups to it. So it's actually saving a lot of files in this case. And I'll show what my hard drive looks like. So you can see exactly what it saved here. So it saved under SGWBMK. You see I've got all of these subgroups, and these subgroups contain subfolders contain other folders, and in these other folders you've got things like what are the leaders, the lower left to upper right, growth stocks, HGS 100, ERG 240 stocks, and they all have their own separate lists. So what you can do let me bring back EdgeRater. And so let me reset this template, and this time I'm going to choose the new roots location, which was, if you remember, that was the SGWBMK location. And now it's, because there are so many folders in there, might not be interesting to see the contents of all of those folders, but you might want to see what stocks made it into the leaders group, for instance. And the leaders group has the name leaders in it, so I'll just say only include lists if the name contains leaders. I'll click OK and then click Run. So it's going through that whole tree now, and it's coming back now with the list of all of the stocks that are in the leaders group for every single day. And in exactly the same way, you can bring up a chart, and the chart will show. Put them side by side, make it easier to see. And so these on 10/24/2014, these are all the stocks that were in the Woodward and Brown leaders group. And I can go back in time. So I'll go back to June the 18th, sort it by the yes. So I clicked on twice to sort with the yeses towards the top. Everything with the yes appeared in the leaders group on that day. And so this is very handy because you can quickly go through, and the date is highlighted for you with the, as long as you have this annotations turned on, you get the yellow annotation pointing to the exact day that it appeared in the group. And then obviously, because we're now further ahead in terms of days than that, we can actually see what happened to the stock since it made an appearance in the leaders group. So it gives us a very good visual way of seeing what happened after the stock was in this case in the leaders group. And then you could do things like, well, that's interesting, what happens if it's been in the leaders group for many days in a row? Well, let's click on 6/17. I'll sort by that first, I'll sort by the 18th second, I'll sort by the 19th third. And you see what I'm doing here is now it's doing sequential sorting. So the only stock right now that had appeared on the 16th, 17th, 18th and 19th was LAD. And I can have a look at LAD, and you can see that so on the 17th it made an appearance, which was right there. On the 18th it also made an appearance there, 19th there, and 20th there. So when it started to make an appearance, it still had a little bit of a move left in it, but it got a little bit high maybe, and had a little bit of a retracement, and then went on to make new highs before it fell off. But this is a good way to go through, and if you've ever wondered what happens or has happened to stocks in the past when they've appeared in groups such as ERG 240 or HGS 100, then this is a very easy way to go and see that. So that is the template in a nutshell. Thanks for watching.